Good evening. I'm Jenny Stimson, and I welcome you to this program on behalf of the Neighborhoods Committee. Earlier this year, we took a walking field trip up to historic Seattle. People were curious to see the building. It's such a lovely building, and to hear something about the history of the organization. But many of the people who went up there said, why aren't you doing this at Horizon House so people that don't walk up the hill can hear about what a wonderful program it is? Also, last year, we went to the Garden House, which is one of the preserved buildings, and we heard how that area was saved because of the nature of the building, but also because it serves the neighborhood. So the whole idea of what does it mean to preserve places and how do you choose them becomes an interesting question. We are going to have a field trip next week to one of the places that has been preserved. That's the Good Shepherd Center that many of you may have driven by on 50th. It has so many interesting programs going on there. I have several friends who live in that neighborhood who go there in the summer to buy food that's sold in the market, or who take their children to programs in the building. It's a beautiful building that's been preserved and used to serve many different groups in that neighborhood. We have a sign up going on right now with the concierge if you want to ride to go to that field trip, which is going to be next Wednesday at 1:30 in the afternoon. So I encourage you to think about that as you listen to this and be excited. Nancy Olsen is our key contact with Historic Seattle, and so she is going to welcome our speaker and give us a little more background. Let's thank Nancy for the work she does in getting these things organized.
Well, thank you, Ginny, and thank all of you for coming tonight. Can you hear me okay? Ice cream cone, right? I've heard that more than once. Yeah, I just want to say again that it's really exciting to have Historic Seattle here tonight. I guess my job is to introduce our speaker, who is Kji Kelly, who's the executive director of Historic Seattle, where he's been for 20 years, the last 10 years of which is executive director. And previous to that, he was responsible for managing the organization's real estate properties. I'm sure Kji will tell you that Historic Seattle is a nonprofit organization, of course, but it's basically in the real estate business, purchasing and renovating structures that are scheduled for demolition, and instead preserving them, renovating them, and make them available for community use. Because Kji is in the real estate business, it's probably relevant to point out that he does have qualifications. He has a couple of certificates from UW on commercial real estate development and construction management. And prior to coming to Seattle and coming to work for Historic Seattle, he managed restoration projects for Duke University, for the state of North Carolina, and for the Pennsylvania State Capitol building. And backing up a little bit, since those are all back east, I was interested to learn that Kji got his undergraduate degree from a place I'd never heard of called Dickinson College in Pennsylvania. People from back east apparently all know about it, but I'm not one of those people, so I had to Google it. And when I did, I learned that it was the first college chartered in the United States once it became a country. So this history is there, and we're going to learn a lot more about it tonight. So please join me in welcoming Kji Kelly.
Thank you. I have to warn everyone, I get emotional. I do cry all the time. Obviously I get choked up all the time. When Jenny was just talking about Historic Seattle and what we do, I was sitting there like, oh, I was getting like, so I apologize, but that's who I am. I've been doing this 33 years now, and I still, contrary to what sort of most presidents, like, I still get emotional about what we do. I still get up in the morning with my colleagues and go to work every day, trying to do things that are really hard in Seattle. It's not easy to do this sort of work. Seattle, I don't know who grew up in Seattle. Who? All right, so everyone's well, 2/3 are sort of transplants to Seattle. I'm a transplant. I grew up in West Virginia. I'm a West Virginia kid. Went to Dickinson. I grew up in Morgantown. I'm not from here. We moved out here in '99, and I still love this place, and I still think it's important, and I still get up every day with my colleagues and try to do the best we can to preserve it. You want to see some slides? I've got some slides. I could put my mic down and just walk off and be happy. We educate, we advocate, and we preserve. So I'll give you a little context about sort of what we do, and I'll actually lift the hood. Usually I don't lift the hood and tell people like where our money comes from and what we spend and all the dirty details, but this is a friend, you're my people. And so so I'll lift the hood on the organization. Our education program, we've really been focused on telling stories for the past 30 years. The types of stories have changed over time. We used to be more of sort of, many of you probably remember, we used to be more of sort of a tea and tour type of organization where you'd come and go to the Stimson Greenhouse or go to the Dearborn House or sort of get behind the scenes to see historic places. And that was great, but we recognize that there is more to Seattle's history than the history of guys that look like me. So we wanted to be more intentional around talking about history in its full form, the good, bad, and indifferent that comes with history. These are just a few images of pretty recent programs that we've had. We're not afraid to go to good bars. The Attic over in Madison Park's a good one. We're also not afraid to talk about things other than buildings. Street trees. Taha's on our council, and she wrote a great book recently. We also advocate, and that advocacy work comes in several different forms. Sometimes we're sort of behind the scenes, quiet, making deals, trying to influence electeds. Other times we're loud and obnoxious and out in front of, we have not, I guarantee, probably one of the last things I do before I leave Historic Seattle, when I leave Historic Seattle, I'm going to sort of chain myself in front of a track hoe ready to tear a building. I'm going to be like defiant and stand in the middle of the street and do something. We haven't done that yet, but our advocacy work is predicated on people. We can't do things alone. So, I'm very selective in the images that I have here, and it really is about the power of people and the power of persuasion, right? Is there a glare? Yeah. That would be fantastic. Our real estate portfolio. Is that good? Yeah. We have, since we were formed back in '73, we've always been really a real estate developer, a good real estate developer, a nonprofit, mission-based, community-based real estate developer. So right now we have 10 properties in our portfolio, and they range in type and certainly in use. Jenny mentioned the Garden House, a recent property that we purchased up on Beacon Hill. great example of a building that's evolved over time. It was built in the 1880s. It was actually moved to its current location in the 1890s, and has really served as a community center for well over 100 years. We have affordable housing properties in Victorian Row, the Dearborn House, where our headquarters are. Cadillac Hotel's been sort of the poster child of the Nisqually earthquake back in 2001. And the Good Shepherd Center that I hope everyone can come out and take a look with us next week. Bellboy Apartments, another affordable housing project. Phillips Apartments, another affordable housing project, all within walking distance to here. Washington Hall was a building that we bought in 2009. We had sold 5 of these. There's 6 total, as my friends here, Nancy included, know. We sold 5 of the 6 buildings, and we took that money and bought Washington Hall back in 2009. We bought the Good Arts building, just a majority interest in the Good Arts building down in Pioneer Square on the corner of First and Cherry. Bought that 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And I forgot the bottom right. I was putting these slides together, and it's arrogant for me to say, but I forgot about this property because we bought it last week. It's the Auburn Carnegie Library. Give you a better image of that. In Auburn, Washington, we were allowed to go outside. They let me go outside of the city limits and go somewhere else in the county, and I went to Auburn and bought a library. Built in 1914, Andrew Carnegie gave the town of Auburn $9,000 to build a library, and it had been used for a library for about 60 years, and it was really sort of this pivotal, central building in the town that was really obviously an active lending library, but also a cultural hub in town. It was in 1965, this library moved, and new owners purchased the building, and it had been a dance and music center for several decades. It's been vacant for about 5 years, and Historic Seattle, with the help of our other preservation organizations in the county, bought the building, and we're working right now with the Auburn Symphony to imagine and to program, create a vision for the reuse of this library so that it can be used for recital space and concert space and offices and storage and that sort of thing. So it's going to be another really great outwardly community-facing project for us here, taking shape shortly. So I have some numbers. That's strange. But we were formed 51 years ago in 1973. Considering all that we do, we only have 14 staff. And we have 6 caretakers that are spread across our portfolio. Our annual budget is $3.6 million. 80% of our income that we receive as an organization is in the form of rent checks. So I love standing in front of the door. I'll go inside and stand there and wait for checks to come through the mailbox, through the mail slot, the first week of every month, because most of our income comes from rent that we receive from the 10 properties that we own. All the properties add up with cash and prizes. We have a balance sheet of about $39 million. This, for me, this slide's challenging. I'm colorblind. So this causes me all sorts of grief. But this is part of sort of popping the hood so that everyone understands our income, and the next slide will show expense. What you see is the $2.8 million. That's the mailbox money that we receive from rent. The 2 slices of the pie that we're focused on, as Erica can attest to, is really this restricted and unrestricted contribution, right? We're trying to build that culture of philanthropy at Historic Seattle because it's hard when you have $2.8 million rolling in annually in rent. We take that income and we take care of the most important resource for us, and the one resource that I get choked up about before I even start talking is our people, our personnel. So our salary total combined is about $1.4 million, and then we reinvest over $1 million on an annual basis in our real estate. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of the properties that we own and that we're good stewards of the properties. So we educate, we advocate, and we preserve. Another way to think of that is we really harness, I don't know if it's unique to Seattle, I think it's unique to humans, is that we're all curious. I walked around and saw unbelievable art here. I walked around and saw an unbelievable collection, book collection here. You're curious, right? You want to understand the importance of putting these down and paying attention to what's around us, right? The evolution of our built environment and how things change, how things evolve for good and bad. Our education program is really based upon that curiosity. When we advocate, as I'm the poster child of this, we bring passion to what we do, right? Without that passion, we're not good at advocating. You know, we're not good at telling people why it's important to try to save historic places. And what makes us unique when we come to preservation is that we show in practice why it's important to save buildings, right? We just don't talk about hypothetically about why preservation is important. We actually put into place. We save buildings. People are able to engage with them and enjoy them. We're unique. Most organizations don't do that across the country and in Seattle. Most have an education component and an advocacy component, but they don't have real estate. That's what makes us unique. So this is what I believe. I don't know if we believe it. I think we believe it. But I certainly believe in three core principles. So why I get up in the morning is that the first, I believe in legacy. You know, there's a, and I said this at the Dearborn House a couple months ago, it feels like at a very selfish time, we're selfless. Like we are preserving on an active, on a daily basis, the work that others have done. We don't know the architects and the builders of these buildings that we save. We've never met them. They built these buildings way before I was around. But we believe in legacy. We believe in a selfless act of preserving buildings for current use. I've got two interesting examples of legacy and what that means in real time, put into practice. Cadillac Hotel, built one of 7 buildings, don't quote me on this, one of 7 buildings built right after the Great Seattle Fire of 1889. So it was like 1890. Made out of brick, unreinforced building, Nisqually earthquake. Earthquakes and unreinforced brick buildings don't go together very well. One interacts poorly. So the building in 2001 when the earthquake struck partially fell down, sort of the top cornice here, came down into the sidewalk, and then the former building owner decided it was a great time to try to make a parking lot out of the building and started to tear down this whole front corner of the building. We jumped in. We were appalled by this. It was important to save. We invested $10.6 million of money that we didn't have. We figured it out and saved the building and partnered with the National Park Service because now it's the Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park. Again, about legacy. This was right after the building owner decided to start tearing down the building. We do things that we probably shouldn't do, that are really risky to do, that are really challenging to do, but it's worth it for us because we believe that there's a legacy, there's a life that is embodied within these buildings that's worth preserving. We quickly jumped in and paid for this sort of steel skeleton that kept the building temporarily shored up so that it wouldn't collapse into the sidewalk. And we basically, this is sort of a finished image of the interior. Has anyone been to the Cadillac? Many? Okay, great. We took the building back to the studs, literally back to the studs, the whole interior of the building. We had to drill down to bedrock because, as many of you probably know, tide flats down in Pioneer Square, that's a lot of not very stable. So we had to drill and drill and drill and anchor it to something solid. We had to do all the finish work. It's $10.6 million back in 2003, so that's quite a bit of money. Another recent project talking about legacy, Washington Hall. Another early 1900s building built by the Danish Brotherhood, designed by Victor Voorhees. Had been used as, we're the third owner, had been used by the Danish Brotherhood as a place for recent immigrants to come, and they had a place to stay in this back third of the building. And then the front 2/3 of the building was performance space and lodge space for their community. We got a call from a neighbor back in 2008 who said there was some guy walking out, this is in the Central District on 14th and 1st, some guy walking out probably with not a jacket as loud and obnoxious as this, walking out who the caller said it looked like a realtor. I don't know what a realtor looks like. I have opinions on what realtors look like, but there's no. And they had concern. They had heard rumblings that the building was going to be put up for sale, and it had, in fact, been put up for sale, and that there were people interested in tearing it down and making it into some obnoxious, 6-story condo. I'm sorry, I will say things that may offend people that are, occasionally, so don't, take it for a grain of salt. This building was important to us, right? Architecturally, socially, culturally, performance-wise, it's a very important building. Jimi Hendrix, the first public performance of Jimi Hendrix was in Washington Hall. You got to buy that, right? So we bought it in 2009, paid 1.5 for it. Right after we bought it, the week after we closed, the ceiling fell down. Of course. That's what we do. Roof leaks. There were people actually living in the building we didn't know were living in the building. They were living in the building. Pigeons and everything that comes with pigeons. It was actually being used as a church. They were holding church service there. Fire extinguishers were literally 10 years out of date. It was rough. We raised $8 million. Worked with the community. Talk about legacy. This is legacy, right? The continual use of the building. We sort of call it the Hall for All and Hall for Notables. Jimmy being a notable, Hall for All was all us. And it's been used as a Hall for All since it was built in 1908 and still is used as a Hall for All today. I love this picture, Mary Ranlett picture. I met Mary many, many years ago. I paid her a little money because I wanted to use a photograph of hers. What I think of preservation when it comes to this sort of notion of legacy is this reverberative effect. Right? We are literally, in this case, a bug in a pond, where I sort of think of us as a rock in the pond. And there's this ripple effect that comes from the work that we do. The other thing that really resonates with me is materials. Materials that we associate ourselves with wear in and they don't wear out. Imagine that. It's like a knee replacement. Things that we want to preserve, the reason why we want to do what we do, the materials that are created are crafted. They're art. They're made to inspire. They're made to occasionally make you cry. This makes me cry for another reason. I don't think there's anything, I'm sorry, many of you may have a house like this. I don't know. This doesn't speak to me that there's permanence or thought or community-mindedness. I'm concerned about the legacy of the material. This is probably going to wear out before it wears in. There's a notion about materials and craft and detail. Things aren't done just because it's easy and cheap. To make this is not cheap. To preserve this is not cheap. This, on the other hand. There's something about preservation and what we do that's rooted in things that are timeless and classic and with thought. I took this picture about, 8 years ago outside our office right up on First Hill here. We don't do faux. No faux. This is fake grass. Because it's easier to maintain? I guess. I don't know. They're literally installing grass in the planting strip. It's plastic. It's not real grass. Again, it's cheaper, it's easier to maintain, it's more cost effective. That's not what motivates me, and that's not what motivates Historic Seattle. Again, detail and thought. I can't imagine living in a world or in a town that doesn't cherish this, value this, want to preserve this. Not a great picture, but you get the point. Detail. Doorknobs. Things are forged. Things are made by hand. The idea that materials are shaped by craftspeople, installed meticulously and thoughtfully, rather than by machine. Like it's I was walking down here earlier and thinking just the construction method that buildings are built with now. Like there used to be like carpenters that would drive square cut nails, drive them with hammers. Now they just are firing away with pneumatic guns. It's like a woodpecker. People. That's obviously what gets me probably most choked up are the people that we work with, the people that we connect to, you all. There's a lot. I was talking earlier, we had a committee meeting and we were talking about all the different points of entry that people have with Historic Seattle. It could be as a tenant, it could be as an attendee to a program, it could be audience member here. But again, it's based on, for this, the book released back in 2018, about curiosity and about appreciating the place where we live. Dearborn House tour several years ago. It's about exploring neighborhoods, right? And just exploring the familiar and unfamiliar places that surround us. And if you don't take time to do that, it's a pretty unfulfilled life, honestly. Getting together as a community and traveling somewhere. I'm always sort of astounded by the notion of community and what preservation means to people. We're all different. The people that we work with at different properties throughout town are all different. But we all have this very tangible connection to the notion of I remember when, ... That's a powerful, powerful connective tissue between people. And we don't necessarily like to think that we're in this nostalgia business, but we are, right? I think when done well, we connect with people at a very personal level so that you really do remember when. Tour several years ago of Montlake. Again, it's sort of getting together with other people that care and exploring the city that surrounds us, the neighborhoods that surround us. And make no mistake that there are a lot of challenges right now about preserving places like Montlake or places like First Hill. We also, to the passion, right? We do our work currently based upon people that cared a long time ago. These folks There was a time when the market was going to be torn down. Why would you tear down Pike Place Market? I guess you could say that about lots of stuff now, right? Why would you do that? Well, there were citizens back in 1971 that said, no, this is short-sighted. We should think about this a little bit. So the advocacy work that we do is not just Historic Seattle. It is really, a group of like-minded people that have been doing this for years and years and years and years. People showing up, taking time out of their workday to go and save some building on First Avenue called the Showbox. Right? A nondescript building that people drive by all the time, but they remember when. They remember seeing their first show there. They remember having their first beer there. They remember something about the Showbox. Or maybe not. Maybe it's all a blur to them when they go in the Showbox. But they made time to go testify before the city council and say why it was important to save the Showbox. It's, again, aligning with people that care and that bring passion to the cause. Nuclear reactor building on the University of Washington campus. We oftentimes punch above our weight class. We took this to the state Supreme Court and we won. And the result was that the University of Washington had to abide by the landmarks ordinance. So we got together and made Valentines. Of course, there's a connection there, right? We make Valentines and show our love for the nuclear reactor building. This is not the actual PI globe. I think it's a pretty close resemblance to it, though. Yeah, we're creative and we occasionally have fun. Even on Green Lake, floating around in the milk carton derby. People obviously make our education programs work, our advocacy work, certainly makes our real estate work. This was obviously during construction photo of the Cadillac back in 2003. And, part of our, not necessarily our challenge, part of our opportunity is bringing people along with us on this risky journey. Like, we're going to spend a lot of money that we don't have. We're going to try to do things that just seem, when you look at a building like this, you're like, why are you doing this? But we're able to bring people along. We're able to establish a vision that people are able to and willing to connect to and go along for the ride. Sometimes they look doubtful and they're like, what are you doing? It's also about working with people that not only bring their heads and their heart, but also bring their hands, right? And that are craftspeople, and that intrinsically get something out of understanding how something was made and how something can be saved. An image of Washington Hall back several years ago. I can't believe it's been 10 years now. That was the stage that Jimmy was on. Architects, contractors, structural engineers, Historic Seattle staff, the amount of people that it takes to do one individual project is pretty astounding. And not only is there a financial risk, but there's the opportunity of building relationships with people that otherwise you wouldn't get to know. And they're all in it for a common goal and for a reason, and which is to save something that was built many, many, many years ago. So I've been thinking a lot about this. I've been at Historic Seattle 20 years now, 10 as ED, and I've tried to tamp down over the years my wild-ass ideas about what we should be doing, how should we be doing it, and it's sort of more quiet now. I'm thinking, what's our future? I'm of the opinion now, and hopefully this may resonate with you, that we need to change, may be a strong word, but certainly adjust culture in this town. Create a greater appreciation and awareness of the importance of preservation, because when stuff's torn down, it's gone. It's gone. And changing culture is difficult. Right? I just don't get up here and start waving my hands around and say we need to change the culture. I think I've always equated Seattle as a teenager. Like, don't tell me what to do. I don't really like my parents. My grandparents are okay because they're sort of cool, but I'm a teenager now. I like what's new. I like my phone. I like what's next. And Seattle's like that. It's always been like that. It's sort of been boom or bust, right? What's next? Amazon, Microsoft. It's fantastic, but it runs counter to the notion of preservation oftentimes. It's like a salmon swimming upstream. So when I talk about changing culture, I really do see in my mind a thread that brings the past to the present for the future. It's not about me. It's not about really historic Seattle. It's about like-minded people that are all united behind a common good, that it's important to draw upon history, particularly now when you think about what's going on in the world. Like, it would be nice to think that we have some honest connection to our history, and that we can draw upon that and bring it to the present, and that we could be forward-thinking and extend the knowledge that we all have to the future. So we do have a plan. I know this is a lot. But we sat down as a team a year and a half ago and developed a 4-point strategic plan that really helps us think through in great detail how we move forward and take the past, bring it to the present for the future. And it really starts with our first goal, and you can just focus if you want, just top line, is we need to communicate better, right? I think we have a communication problem. Communicate the importance of saving meaningful places. We need to invest in the resources to hire people that can help us communicate better. We need to grow the movement. This is an unbelievable turnout, and oftentimes when I go and speak to groups, we have this many folks. But we need triple, quadruple. We need to grow our movement. And that comes in the form of simple things like our public programming, expanding on that, talking more about stories that are unique and that oftentimes challenge us. We also need to strengthen the real estate portfolio, right? We've got that great mailbox money. That's one fantastic. We need to continue to invest in our real estate, buy more real estate, focus on the real estate that we have, and make sure that it's externally focused so that people really can connect to what we're trying to save and what we're trying to do. And then lastly, grow and improve our organization, both internally with staff, our 14 great folks, 6 great caretakers. Make sure that they're happy, right? I think about that most of the time, keeping people happy. But also making sure that we're improving our outreach and our connection with external folks in our community. It all sounds simple, and we have tactics and we have all these ideas, but it really is about making people aware that preservation is important. It's always been important, and if we're not paying attention to it now, then we're losing things. I'm going to end on this. This may sound a little strange. This is why I do what I do. This is a newel post at Washington Hall. Why do you think this is important to me? Craftsman? Gold Star. It's about the where. It's about, I call it earned patina. That is earned. It didn't get like that out of the box. Like it's been worn down. The finish has been scrubbed off by people making that turn on that staircase for over 100 years. Woo! When I managed the all the phases of restoration at Washington Hall. And one of the last things the general contractor said to me was like, some of this woodwork's sort of banged up and a little, needs a little love. And I'm like, you better not touch. For me, that's why I do what I do. That's why Historic Seattle does what we do. It's this notion that people have come before us, right? That things wear in, they don't wear out. There's a legacy. It's about people. That we're not special. We just care, right? And that there's people there that have used this place. I mean, maybe Jimmy's hand was on that knoll post. I doubt it. But, my kids may have been. Your grandkids may have been. Like, there's a legacy there. There's that through line that's embodied in that knoll post. Does that sound weird? Does that resonate? For me, it's very intuitive. It's why I started as a kid at Dickinson College, wherever the hell that is. It's why I went to Pennsylvania and worked in the Capitol building. It's why I went to North Carolina and messed around down there. That's why he came out here, is that the notion of connecting with history in a different way was really meaningful to me. And that's why that's why I've always been connected to Historic Seattle, and that we take that knoll post and use that as the physical embodiment of what we do. That's all I got for you. I only cried maybe choked up a couple times, and I'm sort of on, right? I'm sort of hitting the time mark. Questions? And we have mic runners. Jenny and Nancy can.
I have a question about the old immigration building.
Yeah.
I had a studio there for about
Yeah.
6 or 7 years, and it's a wonderful building.
Yep.
What are the plans for that building? Because it's in great shape
Yep.
now, except
Yep.
it's only got 2 bathrooms in the whole building. I mean, it's
That
really,
seems a little challenging.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm worried about that building because I really love it.
I don't think you need to be worried. We stepped up about a year and a half ago and led the effort to landmark the building. So it's protected. They may still develop the parking lot next to the building, but we worked with the artist friends group that was there. Again, sort of connection to community. Right? We had like-minded artists that didn't want their building torn down. Imagine. So we worked with, and we were sort of like the cover, the shield, because the artists were concerned that the owner was going to kick them out, right? So we stepped in and were like, all right, we can be the tough guy, we can be the bully, and we can move forward with this landmark nomination. That's what we did. So it's protected.
I had a question about the Cadillac Hotel and the Klondike Museum.
Yeah.
I was wondering if anything has changed with that situation, that's official or not.
Yeah, we saved it a second time. So I got an email from one of our council, our board members, probably a month and a half ago. We were concerned that with the new administration coming in, that the General Services Administration, the real estate arm of the federal government, would place buildings like the Cadillac Hotel on some termination list. So we were sort of thinking about that before I got this email. I got the email, wasn't completely shocked. I'm like, oh shit, okay, yeah. It's on the list. And so the next day I reached out to our Washington State delegation in DC and said, hey, what can you do? Can you get this off the list? Because we had the foresight back in September of last year to execute a lease extension with the General Services Administration that extends their lease until 2030. So we had occasionally our crystal ball actually is clear rather than sort of fuzzy, and we used it. So we were able to notify the right people in DC that, no, we got a contract. And you can't break there were no like magical escape clauses in the contract. So we saved it a second time. At least until 2030, and then we'll see what happens. That's a good question. That sort of cut me up a little bit. Because if not for the Cadillac, I did the math, our budget, we'd have a 30% hole blown in our budget if we didn't get rent from that building.
Can you update what's going on with the showbox? I know that's been going back and forth. Where are we?
With the showbox.
Showbox.
Who's been to the showbox? Yeah? What did you see?
A wonderful interior that reminded me of dances and shows that took place a number of years ago, even though it's a popular place with young people right now.
Yeah. So this is going to sound strange. In this case, COVID helped. So before COVID, the building was for sale. Does everyone know where the showbox is? It's sort of right across from the market on First Avenue. The building was for sale. There was a developer who was interested, 30-some story condo building. And we were notified by the tenant who runs the showbox, the performance space, that we're afraid, the tenant's afraid that they're going to be displaced. The building's going to be torn down, condos are going to go up. That's the end of the showbox. So we jumped in, like with the Immigration Naturalization Service building. We met in the showbox, stood in front, stood on the stage, stood on the floor, and we're like, we can't. I mean, from the outside, the showbox is, Inside, you talk about patina. There's a lot of patina in the showbox. I won't go any further. And we were like, this is important. We should save this. We should put forward a landmark nomination. And that's what we did. So the landmark nomination went through. It was approved. Now it sits in this third step of the landmark process, controls and incentives. COVID hits. There's not a huge demand for condos and construction. Things are a little shut down. There are people dying. The tenant signs a new lease. The owner likes the income, doesn't want to take the risk and try to sell it to some developer. So they have a long-term lease now. It's still in this weird controls and incentives, but for all intents and purposes, it's saved for the time being at least. But at least we've made our mark, right, and put forward that landmark nomination.
Where would the Smith Tower fit in your program? It certainly is a historic building here, but it's old, and I don't know if it would make sense from a business standpoint for historic Seattle to get it. Where would a building like that fit in your future?
I can pass the hat around. The Smith Tower, that's an unbelievable building. It's come up for sale for a few times since in the past 20 years since I've been in historic Seattle. That type of building with landmark protection, to a certain extent, doesn't fall on our radar. We look for things like the Showbox or the INS building or Washington Hall or the Cattle, things that don't have an advocate, a built-in advocate, that has codified advocacy behind it in the form of a landmark protection. So, yes, there's over 400 landmarks. That's one of them. So the threat, it's hard. I mean, people always ask, like, how do you determine what buildings to pursue and what you don't pursue? Oftentimes it's money. Oftentimes it's just the level of threat.
I have a comment about the Good Shepherd. I'm over here.
Yeah.
Right here. I belong to a social club that's a gay, lesbian social club. Been in Seattle for about 50 years ago. Mature friends. And we used to meet in the Oddfellows Hall in Ballard, which was upstairs, steep stairs,
Yeah.
no parking, and fortunately they were raising the rent on us. We said, well, we have to leave, and so I was with the committee to find the new place. Fortunately, a person who may be moving in here, John Cheney, says, look at the Good Shepherd. So I went there, and it's a marvelous building for groups to meet, and we have a potluck there once a month. Great kitchen, great places for social events, free parking, and no stairs. So it's really a wonderful community building.
Thank you. John hired me. He's on the, yeah. Oh, is he? Yeah. John is a fighter, right? John is a wonderful advocate of historic preservation, wonderful leader when he was with Historic Seattle. He had the foresight or poor judgment, I'm not sure which, to hire me back 20 years ago. And yeah, the Good Shepherd Center, we have space available if you need office space at the Good Shepherd Center. Parking, what was it, parking, elevator, great grounds? Yeah. No stairs, right.
You've mentioned landmarks a few times. This seems to me a very important topic. I presume that most of the buildings you've acquired were actually landmarks. The city of Seattle has had the wisdom to set up a landmark preservation board to which buildings can be nominated. And there is a system, which is really a national system, but this city is part of it, where if you spend money renovating a landmark building, you can get financial assistance. Of course, the work has to be approved by experts in that field. But I wondered what proportion of the buildings that you own are in fact landmarks.
Most of them are not landmarks before we buy them. They are landmarks after we own them. We make them landmarks. And we also, either during our ownership or upon sale, we place an easement on the building that runs on title in perpetuity. So it's an extra level or layer of protection. Usually it's for the external of the building. I think one thing that's important, and I really appreciate this question, the state legislature right now, the governor will be signing any day now legislation and law that will have a huge impact on the ability to landmark buildings across the state, but it's made for Seattle. Right now, you do not need owner consent to landmark a building. That's why we could landmark the Showbox. The owner of the Showbox owns a bunch of strip clubs all over Seattle. I don't know why I said that. I just thought it was important flavor to throw in. He doesn't care about preservation. He doesn't care about the Showbox. He cares about dollars. With the landmarks ordinance as it stood, we were able to step in without his consent and put forward a landmark nomination. This most recent legislative cycle, we had a perfect storm. And the perfect storm came in the form of Eastern Washington, mostly red, private property rights, didn't like the idea that some dude like me could come up and landmark their building. Like, it was a private property right issue. Western portion of the state, mostly blue, affordable housing. We need housing. We need housing. We need housing at all costs. So it was the perfect storm of issues that came together in a Venn diagram that convinced the state legislature nearly unanimously to strip out that owner consent, or place within it, owner consent regulation within the law. Now, there's a little carve out that anything built before 1900, you don't need owner consent. Thanks very much. So, but to your point, the city's landmark ordinance is one of the strongest was until the governor's going to ink this thing, was one of the strongest landmark, you know this, strongest landmark ordinances in the country.
Hi, Kai. I'm Barbara Stenson
It's nice to
Spade.
see you.
I was a long time, at least 18 years, I think, member of the Historic Seattle Council and on the foundation.
You caused all this.
I'm sorry I did. Yeah. No, I'm not sorry I did. But I just, it's a very complicated thing. Many angels. I want you to know how many wonderful angels in our city and community, both public and private, have made this happen, who have donated money, come by as funders, that have made many of these projects go forward. And complicated financing, so that, Historic Seattle has done many things that small, like there's on 23rd Avenue. Remember the houses that are on 23rd Avenue, workforce housing of the 1900s. You have no doubt that this is an enormously complicated financial package involving federal, state, bank financing situations that Historic Seattle has been able to put together. I think we all really owe you all a great debt for the efforts of these very complex financing and political and community development efforts that have made what we have saved here. And I want you to especially mention Kevin Daniels, who was the force behind the Cadillac Hotel, a wonderful property developer who also represents the Fry Foundation, the Fry Family Foundation, which funds the Fry Museum, which is why it's free. And thank you, Kai, for continuing this enormous effort, which is more than just a labor of love. It's complicated and bean counting and all the other things that go in.
Bobby, if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth doing, right? And that's really true. And those slides that I showed, legacy, people, it's because of you. Because of John, it's because of Kevin Dan, it's because the people were it's because of our friends at HRG back in the day who manage our affordable housing property. Like, we're a community here. It's because the people were willing to do difficult things, take challenging, sometimes absurd risks. I don't know how many times Kevin Daniels was probably the chair at the time, or certainly large on our council. He had the confidence to say at the board meeting, this is important to do. We're going to spend $10.6 million to do this project. And there were new they're still on the board now. There are still council members that say, I remember my first council meeting and Kevin was there and he said, we need to spend $10.6 million. And they're like, I just got here. I didn't even know where to park. And they're like, approved? Yes, approved. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, so it really is building upon the legacy of people that came before us.
Question over here.
I'm glad that I came to the lecture because you've helped me clarify this thing of the real estate and what you do with the reuse of things. But I would like to bring in a kind of negative thing, and it bothers me to do it because we've had a wonderful lecture here. But there's a part of this that reminds me of moving into here. You have a big house, you have a whole pile of stuff in the attic, you have grandchildren that don't want it, and how do you downsize? And is there a place when you downsize in this, when you just, how can you preserve and not downsize? How can you stop hoarding? We have museums of everything. I'm
executive director. I'm not a therapist.
Well, we have museums of everything. There's a museum of the image or something downtown now. What is that all about?
It's a great question, and that is something that we used to struggle with. I think maybe because of my presence, we struggle with it less. But we do not own house museums. I do not show up to work every day in maybe a loud coat, but not a Victorian sort of costume, and we don't have collections. Like, we have some books, we have some ephemera sort of stuff, but we don't have collections because of the load and the weight, we collect some buildings and we turn those inside out for the community. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I've run across a lot of people, a lot of inquiries over the years from people saying, I've got a collection of what? China. Fiesta ware. I've got Fiesta ware out my nose. We are not the place for you. But it is a real thing. And you know, we also do try to work with property owners that are transitioning, that want to make sure that their home is preserved, right? You know, we're a nonprofit. We can occasionally buy things. We can certainly accept gifts of things. We can place easement on properties to protect them. We can take land, you know, we can help with the landmark nomination. Fiesta ware is a challenge for us, but other than that, but it really is because preservationists do tend to not like to get rid of things. They want to hold on to, if a newel post is important to me, I can't get rid of stuff very easily. That's a challenge. Yeah.
Question over here. I wondered what your update could be on Friends of Yamasaki. I know on their website they list you as one of the supporting organizations, and I wondered if you could bring us up to date.
It's a great, so Pacific Science Center, the fountains. The fountains are now dry. Pacific Science Center wants to fill in the fountains and make a meadow. We don't support that. Many in the community don't support that. And this is what we fall back on: our preservation, our practice, our real estate. Maintaining things is difficult. Maintaining things is costly. The solution isn't to fill in a pond, make it a meadow, and say that it's, in this case, it was framed as an homage to the indigenous peoples that were here before. And I call it bullshit. Sorry. It's protected. It's a landmark, and it's a great example of Historic Seattle bringing our education, our advocacy, and our real estate to the table to impress upon people in a thoughtful way that the path of least resistance, Bobby, to your point, if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth doing. It's easy to throw dirt in a hole and call it a meadow. It's more difficult to maintain something and to honor Yamasaki, the designer, and honor Pacific Science Center and honor Seattle Center. Yeah. Don't quote, I hope no one's recording what I'm saying here. I'm going to get in trouble.
We have a few people in the audience who have their hands up, but we have invited you for a fixed amount of time.
I got all the time in the world, so don't worry about that.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-oh. I said it.
The books. You know, it occurs to me that if you ask someone who loves Seattle what they most love,
Yeah.
a lot of times you're going to get an answer like the water. Mm-hmm. Love the water. Love the going to see a game. You know, things that are not the kind of things you've been talking about. And I wonder if there's any way to preserve some of those things that would require keeping the place looking beautiful, and things that are outside completely. Have you thought about that at all?
It's contextual, right? And I think what you're speaking of makes Seattle unique and worth living in, is that you have opportunity for a wide variety of experiences. You go down and see a Mariners game, you're gonna have a great time. They'll lose, but you'll have a great time. You can go, sorry. Just wait. Hold on a second. You know, you can be out on the water in the morning and you can be skiing in the afternoon. Like, you have that wealth and depth of experience. As part of that experience, you should be able to connect with buildings that have been here before you, right? If you didn't want that experience, I'm sorry, but you could go to the east side. You could go live in Bellevue for a little bit and not have that built environment, that experience. That's what makes Seattle unique. And that's what makes Seattle unique of any city across the country, is that you do have that rich urban vibrancy that you just don't get other places. It's now up to us to try to change that culture in many minds to make sure that the built environment has equal importance as the stadiums. Or I did some math. I actually did math like last week, and I added up, since I've been executive director for 20 years, I've added up all the costs of all the mega projects in Seattle. Mega projects meaning the tunnel, the waterfront, the convention center, all the sound transit stuff. I went back to Central Library, Benaroya Hall. It was a long list. How much do you think we spent? And I'm bringing this up for a reason, because we spent a lot of money. How much do you think? Not quite trillions, but close. Feels like it. It was like $150 billion. That's a lot of money. So for us to think that, to your point, that there's value in spending $1 bazillion to build three stadiums with Key Arena, right? If it's important to spend that money to house 3 professional sports teams, you would think it would be a small little percentage of that you could be dedicating to doing a great resource survey of historic buildings in Seattle, or do schools, right? I mean, there's a long list. This was actually my second version of this PowerPoint. My first version, and Erica can attest to this, was sort of a, I wouldn't say doom and gloom thing, but I'm like, this is all the challenges, these are all the challenges that we face. It's hard to do preservation. You framed it in a more positive way. There's so many great things to do, but yeah, we've spent a lot of money, and to think that we don't have enough money to do the legacy, right? And to connect people to preservation and do all the things that we're doing can be frustrating sometimes.
I just want you to remember that Historic Seattle funded a terrific historic assessment of the Seattle Public Schools that transformed a bond issue and saved and rebuilt, rather than demolished, an ensemble of truly beautiful and effective and modernized as our result. And Historic Seattle did that. So it was another part of the complicated puzzle.
For me, what you're saying, Bobby, is really, for probably everyone in this room, your first experience with historic preservation. What am I talking about? It's your school. It's where you went to elementary school. It's the smell, and it's the little desks, and the little water fountains, and you go back and you're older and you think but that emotional connection to place is powerful, right? And so the notion of preserving schools and surveying schools, now unfortunately, I think that owner consent would be required even by the Seattle School District in order to landmark. We'll see.
What do you have your eye on next? What do you cover?
It's awfully personal.
What?
So that's awfully personal.
What building do you?
Well, we just bought one last week, so my eye's still on that. I wish we had the ability to seriously and aggressively have that proactive approach. We don't have the money. Yeah, right. I mean, I'll be honest, like, the challenge in Seattle right now is the dirt and the air is more valuable than the building. Now, it's a double-edged sword for us. Like, we receive $2.8 million, $2.8 million in rent because of the value of that building and because of the rent that it can demand. Even though it's below market, we still generate income. So we reap the benefit of real estate and the value of real estate, but yet on the advocacy side, it causes tension because it's hard to save things that have that challenging value to them. So to answer, to be brief, I wish we had a more active sort of target list of properties that we're looking for. We're really now focusing on engaging with people in creative ways on residences, on houses, people that are downsizing, moving on, looking for ways to protect. We're sort of looking more on a granular level rather than Smith Tower, of the world.
We were talking a little while ago about schools. I'd just like to mention, I was on the Landmarks Preservation Board some years ago. At that time, many, many schools came up, and I think that the school board or whoever runs it was keen to have improved preservation involved with the improvement of their schools. Sometimes they were, a little bit uncertain whether they would let the Landmarks Preservation Board have its way. But there was tremendous enthusiasm for people working in the schools, for parents, and so on. And for each thing that was presented to the Landmarks Preservation Board, there was an open meeting, and people would come and talk about why it was important to them, they're just living in the neighborhood, that a particular aspect of the school should be preserved. And I think there's a tremendous sense of that value in Seattle, which is why you're able to do your work.
I think it comes down to being very personal and very neighborhood oriented. Preservation oftentimes is at its best when it's very localized. It's hard for us. It is actually hard for our small staff to focus in on the micro individual building advocacy and at the same time not try to focus on the 30,000 foot level of advocacy and state legislation and all that sort of thing. We've only got really 1.5 staff members that are focused on advocacy. So to toggle back and forth between saving the tree as the forest burns down, it's a challenging dilemma for us sometimes.
I know you all have more questions because this is an extremely important and interesting topic, but it is getting late, and I think we're going to let Kji go home, and we're going to give him a big round of applause for. And we have copies of the book. What is this?
You're the
Tradition
you're
and
the
Change.
bookstore owner. You should know these things.
Tradition and Change on First Hill, which are available as a gift to those of you who would like to take one home.
And if you need extras, let me know. Let Nancy know. She can get a hold of me, and I'm happy to bring down more box. We're just right up the street, so we can bring you boxes of books. Thank you.